Hello, hello. Are we live? Are we live? Yep. Right. Welcome back to my font project. I'm parsing fonts from TTF files and then typesetting and rendering text onto an image. So I just had to restart my computer in the last day or two. So I need to CD to my project. Yeah, Tmux is already started. Vim here. This is the main module for my library. My cat is going nuts. Callie. I don't really know what she wants. We just gave her an extra large breakfast. She probably wants attention, but I'm streaming instead. So you guys should feel lucky. Hey Connie, welcome to the stream. Who wants attention? Oh, my cat, Callie. You might be able to hear her. You must have heard that. Callie. Callie. She's just like running back and forth up and down the hall. Okay, this is unusual. Give me a second to check on her. Callie, what's up? Why do you have the zooming so bad? Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just an extra severe case of the zoomies. I don't know what's going on. More of a dog guy. Yeah. My week was pretty good. It's the weekend now, so I like that. I can spend more time on this side project. All right, so I ran this thing. It made a specimen for this Noto Sans regular font. Oh god, I have to fire up GIMP. The other thing that I did in the last stream is I started using a program called Magic to convert PPM files to PNG files. So I could do that and then use like any photo viewer to look at a PNG. GIMP is going to take forever to load here. Looks for data files. I don't know what's in data files. I think one of the things that GIMP does at startup is load fonts, and it loads a bunch of fonts. But other than that, I don't know why GIMP is so slow to start up. So I can run magic. I think I have to type out .exe because I'm in WSL. Usually on Windows, it doesn't matter whether you include the exe or not when you run a command. Are you going to find the program or are you going to error out? Yeah, there we go. So you have to do .exe. And Magic is pretty cool. It can convert basically any one image format to any other image format. And it even supports weird things like PPM. So we can do PPM and then convert that to PNG. You just give it the input file as the first argument and the output file as the second argument. And it's that simple. So that made a PNG. Need to go to that folder. So that was Notos. Why don't I just sort these by modification? So now we have the one that I just made at the top. I know that GIMP is not the fastest, but your install is really slow. Yeah, something about this computer. I have a hard disk drive. I should probably have a solid state drive. I think that might be why it's so slow. Yeah, so this is the font that I just rendered. And I've started working on a color randomizer. So one of the things that we did in the last stream was we made a batch script which generates a specimen for all 500 fonts that I have installed on Windows. So you still don't have an SSD in 2023? Yeah, this is my personal computer for work. I have a pretty good machine. I don't know. I was trying to be cheap and it didn't really work. The last time I got the computer that I had before this, I built it myself and I put so much time into it. Then when it came time to get a new one, I was like, I don't really feel like doing that. I'm just gonna buy something from Dell. And I got like a mediocre computer from Dell, but I guess I skipped on the hard drive because something is super slow. So these are all the fonts that I generated. Well, you probably should buy an SSD. They really aren't that expensive. Yeah, it should be fairly easy to just like plug it in to one of the hard drive bays. So I probably should do that. These are the fonts that we generated on the last stream. Yeah, we've got some interesting looking fonts in here. But like they all have the same palette, and I want to change that. So if you go to Wikipedia and you look at any of these fonts, like if we look up Bodoni and Garamond, because I spelled Garamond wrong, and Times New Roman. Every Wikipedia page has a specimen like this. And they all have different palettes. They all have different color schemes or color themes, whatever you want to call this. I think I might just call it a palette. So I think I would like to randomly generate some colors, but I also want to be careful that I generate combinations that have high contrast. So I want to have like dark foregrounds on light backgrounds. The pages that were open are proof that Jeff doesn't restart his PC. I haven't restarted since last night, but like early Friday morning, I had a power outage, so that like forced me to restart everything. I don't have a battery backup either, so whenever there's a super brief power outage, I end up losing everything that I had open. Yeah, never restart. I really don't restart unless I have to, or unless Windows nags me to restart. But yeah, as you just saw, I still have all my Minecraft tabs open from last night. Callie. The cat Callie has a serious case of the zoomies. So, yeah, I think we can randomly generate some palettes. I started on that, and I just showed that for Noto Sans. The problem is it sucks. Like we have a foreground and a background that don't really have a good contrast between them. Got a 2.5-inch drive. I know they're affordable. I'm just lazy and I haven't ordered one. By the way, hello Dink. Welcome back to the stream. Oh, you and Connie are talking to each other. I got confused. Okay, GIMP did eventually start up. So here's proof that you can look at ppm files in GIMP. There it is. It's the same as the PNG. I might build PNG export into my library later. I kind of don't want to add dependencies, so I'm not sure what I'll do. Need to get some coffee? Yeah, have fun. Got some right here. 2 weeks, 4 days, and 13 hours. That's pretty good. Uh, I installed this program called htop. I think I have it here too. Yeah, I installed this program called htop, and it tells you the uptime right here. When I installed it on my Linux laptop, I ran this, and it said like uptime 180 days. I was like, holy shit! I should probably like install updates and reboot because there's no good reason to have that much uptime. I did not mean to kill Tmux. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so let's try to make this color randomizer a little bit better. If we look at my to-do list, the big thing is to fill in the contours instead of drawing outlines around the letters. Forgot how to zoom. Yeah, instead of drawing outlines around the letters, I want to fill in these contours, and that's like the big to-do thing on my list. It's one of the last things I have to do to sort of make this look better. I'm planning to do that next weekend. I don't think I want to get it started this weekend because it might take a while. But next weekend I have a 3-day weekend, so I should almost certainly have enough time then. I don't have money for good coffee, and I hate the cheap stuff, but you do have a solid state drive. So it's all about priorities. I have good coffee, but I have a hard disk drive. So filling in the contours, that's the big thing to do, but I'm not going to do that this weekend. So color randomizer. Maybe I'm not really sure what I'll do today. Maybe I'll do unit test diffs. So like when I change something and one of my unit tests fails, I would like to see like which pixels changed. I should be able to like highlight the pixels in some way. If you're watching the other Twitch streamer, Soding, he's working on a graphics library in C, or I don't know, maybe he finished it. At least he was working on a graphics library in C, and he has diffs, which will show like magenta pixels wherever there's a change in his unit tests. So I'm planning to steal that idea. That might be something good for today. Yeah, I think that's a plan. Yeah, so first I want the color randomizer to be better. My SSD was already in my laptop when I bought it. Yeah. It's all trade-offs. I wanted to be lazy and not build my own computer. As soon as you start picking components and like either you rack up a pretty hefty bill with Dell, or you might as well just build it yourself, but then you're putting so much time into it. I have 3 or 4 SATA SSDs at home. I just got them for free in systems I bought really cheaply for parts. Oh, that's cool. Where do you buy things for parts? Do you get them used from other people? Yeah, so here's my subroutine specimen. And this is all my main program calls now. So this is the library, but if I look at the main program, we have a bunch of junk that's commented out, but all it really does is it loads command line arguments, and then it generates a specimen for the font file. And the specimen has the name of the font and some other hard-coded text, which never changes. So the way I'm seeding my random number generator is I'm using the TTF file name. That's okay, but it's a little bit overcomplicated. We have this other thing called like the checksum adjustment. I think I have that saved. Yeah. If we just use the checksum adjustment, which is sort of like a random number, you could assume that it's like a pseudo-random number. It's like a sum of all the digits in your whole TTF file, subtracted by some other magic number that's part of the TTF spec. So I think I could use this as my random number seed, and that would be a lot easier than like summing up the characters of the file name. So that's overcomplicated, but if we just use the seed as the checksum adjustment, I think that should be easier. And then this will be different for every file, but it will be consistent so that if I regenerate a specimen, it will be the same colors as before. And even if I generate specimens in a different order, they should still be the same. I forget where you live, but if you're from the US, it would be like FB Marketplace or Craigslist or yeah. I'm in the US, so yeah. Those are options. Just want to make sure this is random, and then I'm just using that checksum adjustment as the seed for the random number generator, and this is how you seed that in Fortran. You call this function srand, and then after you call that, you can call rand, and that will be seeded. Like a little scroll bar here. There we go. It's still there. Oh well. So this should be different. Okay, integer casting. Can srand not take int 8? I was chatting with an Alcy recently and I just never remembered anything. You can tell by my accent, right? I mean, you never know. Maybe I'm an American living in Australia. Yeah, srand. Guess it only takes integer 4. Okay, it has to be integer 4. So there's a newer part of the Fortran standard. Do I want this? Like, what's the difference? So this one's a subroutine, which is kind of annoying. I like the function form, where you can do result equals rand. That's more convenient than calling a subroutine, because then I can't use that as part of an expression. Even if this is more modern and more standardized, I think I'd like to stick with rand. But they both sound similar. They both generate real numbers in the range from 0 to 1. So like, yeah, with the functional form, I can use this inside of an expression and then like multiply that by whatever range I want it to be in. Yeah, so I have to cast this to integer 4. How did we get, oh yeah, unused variable, because I commented this out. I now have warnings treated as errors, so usually you would still be able to compile if you have an unused variable, but now I made that an error. Okay, yeah, we have different colors. This one happens to look okay, but that's just coincidence. What is the seed? That's the seed for Noto Sans, and it should be the same if I rerun it. 710. It's still 710 for Noto Sans, but then if I do Arial, I restarted, so I can't just reverse incremental search anymore. Arial has a different seed. Is this up to date? I don't know which file this opened because I just did open recent and I don't know the path. Let me change something. Alright, just fuck it, leave the typo in there. Nope, that is not the file I wanted. A few people from South Africa I know have the most generic West Coast high GDP neighborhood pronunciation, even though they grew up and never left South Africa. Yeah, like Trevor Noah, that comedy news show host. I can't really detect much of an accent in the way that he speaks. I know that that's not up to date. Where? I forgot to build it. That's why nothing changed. Come on, reload. There we go. Okay, yeah, so Noto Sans had one background, this had another background. And that's the idea of the random seed. Everything has a different palette, although I'm only using it for the second background. Once I get like a good random color generator, then I'll use that for both backgrounds and like one of the foregrounds. I think I want some of them just to be black and white without any randomness. Why can't I revert? I have to reassign the keyboard shortcut. I thought that would, I guess that got cleared out when I restarted. So I made a keyboard shortcut for this before. Control R, I think that makes sense. R for revert. There we go. Yeah, so that's why that wasn't working. My keyboard shortcut disappeared. Alright, now let's make this random color generator better. So basically I want a random light color for like the foreground and a random dark color for the background. That way I'll have guaranteed high contrast. So when you have an RGB triplet, like everything is in the range of 0 to 255. So you have that for R, same thing for G, and then 0 to 255 for B as well. So if I generate something random in that range, I'm going to get a totally random color. It might be light, it might be dark, it might be somewhere in the middle, and then that's why I might end up with bad contrast. But if I restrict this to a smaller range, like 0 to 128, that would always be a dark color. And then if I do something between 128 and 255, that would always be a lighter color. Or I could like cut out 128 and make them on like opposite ends of the spectrum. So I think I'll do something like that. And then I need to like bitwise OR them together. Each part of the RGB triplet, I need to bitwise OR them together into one integer because that's how I'm encoding colors. If you want more contrast, you could also try representing the RGB value as a 3D coordinate and calculate the Euclidean distance. Yeah, so you could repeatedly generate new random colors and check if they're acceptable. So that would be a good approach. I think I'll do something a little bit different though. Oh yeah, so I want to look at my ppm reader because that also uses bitwise OR. Is it read ppm? It's read img. Yeah, so what this does is it reads a byte for red, and it reads a byte for green, and it reads a byte for blue, and then it shifts them by 3, 2, or 1 bytes, and then it bitwise ORs them together. So I want something like this, but with random numbers in here instead of read from a file. And then, of course, FF at the end for the alpha channel. The alpha channel should always be FF because I'm not really handling transparency, and when I export to ppm, that doesn't have an alpha channel anyway. So I'm going to copy that. My approach would be very inefficient, but probably give a more colorful result. Yeah, it really wouldn't be that inefficient. It would probably only take like 1, maybe 2, and in very rare cases, 3 random generations. So we have this pasted. I'm going to comment that out and then replace that with the stuff that I want. I'm really good at finding inefficient solutions to simple problems. Yeah, me too. Optimization is good, but early optimization is bad. So first you have to get it working and get it working right. And once you have that finished, then you can get it working fast. Yeah. And unless you're benchmarking things, you really can't know what is optimal. So I'm just going to implement it this way. And you had this random idea to try random colors and then calculate the distances. Maybe your idea is faster. I really wouldn't know unless I implemented both and tried to optimize both approaches and then compared how long it takes to run. Also, this is not the bottleneck. The bottleneck of my program is file input output. So I render the text. The slowest part is just writing the ppm file because ppm files are not compressed. If you look at this aerial file, it's like over 2 megabytes. Where's one where we have a PNG too? Yeah, so if you look at Vivaldi, PNG, and ppm, it's like 2 megabytes for the ppm file and 18 kilobytes for the PNG file that was converted by magic.exe. So PNG is a much more efficient compressed file format. ppm, it's so big that that's actually the slowest part of my program, just writing that to disk on my slow hard disk drive. We love white space. Yeah, so it would really be pointless to optimize the thing that generates 1 or 2 or maybe about 5 random colors for an image when the hard part is writing 2 megabytes of pixels to a disk. Yeah, so instead of read U8, I want random numbers, but I want them restricted to some range. I want this to be dark, so I want it to be closer to the 0 end of the 0 to 255 spectrum. Also, PNG is lossless. Yeah, you're right. JPEG is lossy, but PNG is lossless. And this is going to be rand times, I want it to be times 128, but slightly less than 128, because if I generate a random dark background color that's close to 128, from the low end, and then a random foreground color that's close to 128 from the high end, that's also going to be low contrast. So I think maybe I want to split this range into three. 0 to 96, is that 255 divided? Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't feel like doing math. What's that, 85? I'm gonna do 85 instead of 96. 96 is pretty close. I mean, it really doesn't matter. And this is probably going to complain that I'm like multiplying a real number by an integer. So I'll probably have to cast it like this. Let's find out. Not div by 3, but 96 is a nice number when working with powers of 3. Yeah. Oh, 3 times 2 to the 5. Okay. Oh yeah, 3 times 32. Right. The left-hand side, this is BG2. And then I think it's going to complain. Yeah, it's going to complain about the integers. Let's double check. Yeah, it's complaining about the integer. So I do have to cast this. Whoa. And you mean powers of 2, not 3. Yeah. We'll see what this looks like, and then I might adjust the range. Huh, that compiled. I'm a little bit surprised. Okay, that looks... That's a weird coincidence. It's almost the exact color that we had for Noto Sans, generated in 2 different random ways. Like, they're not exactly the same. Let's see what these values are. So that's 0B, whatever. And this is 1B. Yeah, so they're close. They look similar, but they're not exactly the same. And then if I actually regenerate Noto Sans, this should have something different now. It's also blue. So is my random color generator just always making blue? That wouldn't be good. It shouldn't. Let's try a couple other fonts. Where is Calibri? What does the Fortran range return? It returns something, it returns a real number in the range from 0 to 1, or like a float. Fortran calls a 4-byte real a real. Every other language calls that a float. Yeah, they're all kind of blue. I think you're on the right track. I need to debug what this is returning. And then Do I just need to truncate it and cast it to an integer 1? Because I feel like I'm generating something bigger than 255. No, that doesn't make sense. Okay. Right, yeah, well, let's see what these random numbers are. Crazy to me that most languages just look like an analog of a language created in the 1950s and 2023. Yeah, it all looks the same. It depends more on your programming style than anything else. So like if I was writing things with all caps, which you can do because Fortran is case insensitive, uh, then you would look at it and say like that's probably Fortran or maybe COBOL. I don't know. Does COBOL use all caps as like the default style? But yeah, like I'm programming in a style that looks kind of like C or kind of like Rust. So who knows what language this is? Yeah, let's do the reals as one step, and then convert that to an integer as a second step. And then let's print all of these. Started with C, so everything looks like C to me. That's fair. So they're all below 85. And it does make sense that this is kind of blue, because the third one, which is the blue one, is the largest. And again, this is actually blue, so I think I just needed to try another font. That one is also going to be blue by coincidence. Okay, this one should not be blue. It should be red. Not as red as I expected. But like 24, 14, 0. Let's get the color picker. Yeah, 24, 14, 14, 0. So I think that's correct. I might need to take a break. This coffee is hitting me hard. Brown is basically just dark orange. Yeah. Yeah, like it's hard to tell what a color is going to look like just by looking at the RGB triplets. Like I would have thought that this is red, but it's dark brown, dark orange. So maybe I probably don't need these temporary variables. I think I just undo everything that I just did. Or do I want to leave it in for debugging? I think no. So will that be the same? All right, yeah, it's the same thing. We didn't need, the debugging was good because we confirmed that it's doing what we expect it to do, but we didn't need to be so verbose with all those temporary variables. We can just generate the random numbers inside of all this bit shifting stuff. Red with 50% yellow is some reddish orange, and the values are quite low, so it's a brown. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm gonna need to take a break. I'll be back in like 10 or 15 minutes, so I'll be back. All right, is my audio back? Cool. All right, and I'm just doubling down on the coffee, so I do not learn lessons. Okay, so this seems to be working, and now I want to make this a function so that I can get just not one random background color, but multiple background and foreground colors, because I think I want a dark, I want to name the function like random dark and random light, because I want a dark background here and a light background here, and then I want some random foregrounds too. Well, it's still early enough for you to chug some more coffee. Yeah, maybe I'll provide an argument. So like if we want to change this 85 to make it possibly more lighter, we can add this as an argument to the function. But I think I won't do that for now. Type is integer 4. I don't know if I've explained this on stream, but it's kind of interesting that Fortran specifies integer types by the number of bytes, not the number of bits. Like in every other language, you have int 8, int 32, int 64 for the number of bits, but in Fortran you have int 4 or integer 4 for a 4-byte integer. I think I kind of like it this way because you never see an integer type that's not a multiple of 8. Like, is there a type out there like that that's not an even number of bytes? Maybe, but like I'm not aware of it in C. So it feels to me like the Fortran choice is more reasonable. Int 1? There's an int 1? Is that a joke? There are Google results. Okay, so these are other languages where it's actually bytes. So Fortran is based God. I agree. I guess it makes no sense in those languages even to name it that. It's called bool, yeah. The funny thing is bool sometimes might be a whole byte. C size of bool. It's probably like compiler dependent. The size cannot be smaller than 1 byte. So a bool is not 1 bit, it's 8 bits, which it seems like a waste. But I don't really know how hardware works. It might be faster, like you have to load in a whole byte into a register anyway, so it might as well be 8 bits. It would be nice to have int 2 or int 3, but yeah, it's the register sizes. I don't really know much about hardware, but like it doesn't make sense to have things that aren't multiples of 8 or not powers of 2. So it's the same way in Fortran. Actually, it's worse. The default logical kind Fortran has logicals instead of booleans, but it's the same thing. I'm not even using them. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't have any in this project, but the default logical is 4 bytes, and then if you want it to be 1 byte instead of 4, you have to override that default. Okay, so I think this function should work, and then we just have to call that function, and it should be the same. Not that. Okay, that looks the same. And then if I regenerate Noto sans, that should also be the same. All right, I think that's working. So that's a random dark color. Actually, that's just one of them. So I think I want some of my foregrounds to be random dark colors. Is this one? Yeah, this one is dark. I think I want some of these just to be white and black instead of being random. Just use assembly if you want to manually manipulate two bits without creating an 8-bit wrapper before you copy it into a register. Yeah, that's probably the way to go. I think Rust has a library called like bit vector, and this might be a type that exists in other languages. Like if you have just one, it doesn't make sense because you have to load it into a register. But if you have a large array of a bunch of bits, then that might make sense to actually only use one bit. So okay, boost has bit vector. I think there are Rust versions of this too, but I've never used this in any language. Although it seems like it would be useful. There's bit set. Okay, yeah. Bit set, not bit vector. So I think I want whatever the big letter is. It's a Q in my specimens. I think I want this to be random, and then I think I want some of the other ones just to be black or white. I honestly enjoy using ASM sometimes. I should learn assembly. I've done a very small amount of assembly work, but nothing serious. Implement floating point yourself, nerds. Yeah, that might be difficult. Though I find ARM64 ASM nicer than Intel 64 ASM. Yeah, I've heard a lot of complaints about Intel assembly. I know there are differences like uh, the move instruction. I think it's in one assembly syntax it's like move source dest, and the other one it's move dest source. So that could get confusing when you switch ASM languages. So I think I want the Q to be random and then the other ones to be black and white. So the Q is foreground 2. Yeah, I want this one to be a random dark color. And then Some of these are just going to be black. So that's just black. I don't really want 4 foregrounds either. Okay, maybe I want this to be random. It really doesn't matter. I'm spending too much time on this. Yeah, then I want this background to be a random light color. Yeah. I need synonyms for dark and light that have the same number of letters. You know what? It doesn't matter. I like it when things are lined up vertically. So I like to say like low and high because they both have 2 letters instead of like low and H-I-G-H, and now like one has 3 letters and the other has 4 letters, so it throws off your vertical alignment. But for functions, it's probably less important. It's probably more important that the function name is readable. Whom care? Yeah. Okay, so we need a random light color generator. And this is going to be the same idea, but instead of like, why am I using this range syntax? Yeah, so random dark, every color in the RGB channel has to be between 0 and 255. So in dark, they're closer to 0. For light, I want it to be closer to 255. So I'm gonna do 255 minus this, using FF here instead of 255. So it's a lot more convenient to just say 255 because the compiler complains about integer casting if I use the hex literal. Okay, now we should have like a bunch of random colors here. And yeah, the contrast is not terrible. Is that background really random? Here, let me look at this one too. I know I ran it not that long ago. Okay. Yeah, so they look a little bit weird. The contrast is nice. The contrast is good, and that's all I wanted. I think what these Wikipedia pages are doing, I think these are manually generated. I don't think these are random because they all kind of look nice. I don't know, maybe Times New Roman looks a little bit weird, but these ones are like nice color palettes. So I think those have to be like manually curated. I don't think they're totally randomly generated. So these look like a little bit weird, but like the contrast is good enough that it's readable, and that's the only thing that's really important. Maybe just the palette is generated. Yeah, they might have like a set of colors and they randomly pick a color from the set, but it's not just like a random integer or a totally random integer. Watermelon palette. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Looks like watermelon. Or it makes me think of watermelons. Yep. So like all of the colors are different. Now I'm hungry. I never buy watermelon because like what do I do with a whole watermelon? I live by myself, so like I'm never gonna eat that before it goes bad. I have to find somewhere where I can buy like an individual watermelon slice, eat it. Let's look at a couple other ones. Okay. Did I already do Arial? No. Okay. Yeah, so not all of these look great, but the contrast is readable, at least. So I think it might be time to commit. One 15-kilogram watermelon in one evening by myself is no problem for me. Huh. I guess I've never tried it, so maybe it's doable. 15 kilograms? No, that's crazy. Even if it's mostly water, that's too much weight. But then I'm running to the restroom the whole time. Yeah, that's the problem. Okay, I can delete this. Don't need to log the seed. But I still can't stop eating because nice ripe melons are just way too good. I do kind of want a watermelon now. Maybe you've convinced me. Okay, I think the next thing I want is diffs for the unit tests. Uh, yeah, yeah. Let's work on diffs for the unit tests. I also want to generate some more of these specimens. So like if you look at the old ones that I generated on the last stream, they all have the same color palette, but let's see what these look like with the randomly generated colors. So I think all I need to do is run this script. That should start going. I have a decent number of fonts that I can't support yet. Yeah, I think I'll work on unit testing diffs though. Yeah. Now we have random colors for every font. This one, this is old. Yeah, these look okay, I guess. I still think the Wikipedia palettes are a lot nicer, but at least the contrast is readable. All right, let's do the unit testing diffs. So I probably need to make something fail to be able to test this. It's like if I just offset this string horizontally by like 10 pixels, that should fail the test. Yeah, so there's one test that fails. If I undo that, it should have passed. I haven't run these locally in a while, so I want to double check this anyway. All right. Yeah, so then if it fails, I want to export a diff image so that I can see which pixels changed. "5:30 p.m. and you haven't eaten today?" Yeah. Go buy a watermelon. And that if there are two of you, then you don't have to eat 15 kilograms by yourself. Uh, let's have a subroutine called write image diff. It will take two canvases and then write the diff. For pixels that are the same, it will still write those pixels, but only the pixels that are different will be like the special diff color. And then where are we going to put this? It's going to be like this path. And then this is only for Garamond for now, but then I think we have to refactor the tests. So like this stuff or this stuff actually happens at the end of every test. So I need to refactor that as a shared subroutine. So yeah, the way that we're going to do that, maybe we need size checking. Because like if you try to write the diff between two canvases that are different sizes, that's like undefined behavior. I think I'll just let it crash. I don't know. Maybe I'll catch that later. But I think it's going to crash before that. Because if you try to compare them before you even write the diff, this will crash. So I'm not going to bother handling that yet. But we need a third canvas because these are both intent in. That means we can't change them. Like they're immutable as far as this subroutine is concerned. So we need a third one, which is just the pixel if they're the same, or like the highlighted magenta diff color if they're different. But this is not intent in. It is allocatable though. So I think we can just initialize it. That should automatically allocate it. Now the compiler might warn about this. Like there's this thing where it thinks it's uninitialized here, even though like it's on the left-hand side. Of course it's uninitialized. So I might have to work around that if the compiler complains. And then we're just going to loop through the pixels, and if they're different, we'll highlight them with like a magenta diff color. Might as well make that a variable. Call it the diff color. That's going to be magenta. RGB, that should be magenta. And then we just have to iterate through the pixels. When I have double loops through space, like this is a pretty common construct in codes that I write, whether it's for this project or for other things that are working with like a voxel grid or a pixel grid. I like to just not indent the inner loop because like it's really looping through space. So it's kind of like one loop, even though it's two lines of code. So I like to not indent that, but I still indent the body, but I just like I don't have an extra level of indentation for the X loop compared to the Y loop. So that's my style. That should work, and then we just have to export the image. I think that's it. Let's see if that compiles. I'm sure I messed something up. Yeah, there's this stupid compiler warning. It's really a false positive. Like it says that it's uninitialized. I'm using it on the left-hand side. Like I'm initializing it here. Why are you warning me that it's uninitialized? This has to be a compiler bug. Anyway, I know that I can work around it by just allocating an empty array before I actually initialize it. Yeah, so maybe I should turn off some of these compiler flags and not have it warn me about that and not have it treat that warning as an error. But I'm trying to be good and be strict and like have 0 errors or 0 compiler warnings in this project. So that's why I have those flags turned on. Now there should be a diff image for that, for Garamond. Yeah, so it writes a diff file. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah. Yeah. So what I did is I shifted that text by 10 pixels. Is that really? Okay, this image opened weird. Can I move this down? Okay. I don't know why GIMP opens images like that, where the canvases were the same size, but it was like shifted up so the top was cut off. Yeah, so to break this test, to test my diff, I just shifted this text by 10 pixels. So now all of those pixels that are different are highlighted in magenta. And there happen to be a couple that overlap. So like the top of the G, when you shift it by 10 pixels, part of it still overlaps with itself. So those ones are not highlighted. And then like all the text that I didn't shift, it's not highlighted. But like the text that changed is highlighted like that. So this is exactly what I wanted. Yeah. Now I need to do that for the other unit tests. And I probably want some logging, which is a little bit louder about this. Okay, I think that logging should be more obvious. We should have an error message, and then it should say the name of the file, and the file name should be highlighted in red. So let's confirm if that looks the way that I want it to look. Yeah. So there's an error message, and that says the diff was written to this file. I don't know which part I want to highlight in red. I guess it's fine like this, as long as there's something that's easy for me to see when I'm scrolling through the logs. I think I want to separate this with an extra new line. And then of course there's the failure at the end, but at the end it doesn't tell you which test failed, so I have to scroll up for that. Let's get an extra new line, all right. That's the way I want it to look. And now I need to do this for all of my font specimen unit tests, not just this unit test. To think about these paths, though, because I'm going to have to pass a bunch of things as arguments. The first canvas, the second canvas, the suffix, and the diff file name. Although maybe I can just construct the diff file name from the suffix. So that would take down 4 arguments to 3 arguments if I make this a function. And then I need end pass and end fail. So 5 arguments. It's kind of a lot of arguments. But I don't want to have this copied and pasted in like 4 or 5 different tests. End pass, end fail, the first canvas, the second canvas, and the suffix. Okay, that's not that bad. Now that I type it out, 5 arguments doesn't look like it's too much. So we have those arguments. We have the first and second canvases. And a suffix. And then we can construct the file paths from that suffix. Although some places I have CV instead of CV1, so I have to replace those. It's only in 2 places, that wasn't too bad. And then I need to call it. I think that should work. Let's see if it compiles. That did not work. SFX. Okay, so this can't be a parameter. That means it has to be allocatable. That should work. This is where languages like Rust are kind of nice, because this should be immutable. But Fortran doesn't really have a concept of mutable versus immutable variables. You either have a parameter, which is like a const in C, or you have a variable. But like this, I'm always going to assign it to this. So this should be kind of immutable, but there's not really a good way to do that when it's based on an argument to the function. So it has to be totally variable. Okay, this doesn't have to be an argument. What now? Test integer. That's not right. What? 3, 8. Oh, I have an extra argument. Yeah. Now this is unused in this subroutine. More unused variables. There we go. That compiled. I think the diff just worked. So it still exports a diff. It still tells me the name of the test that failed based on like the suffix. And then it creates a file. What the hell did that refresh to? Okay. Yeah, so let's shift to this by even more pixels so that we can see this change. Let's shift it by 20 pixels instead of 10. And then this should look different now when we really reload it. There we go. So these highlighted pixels, they shift. Basically both the original and the highlighted pixels are highlighted because you can't tell like what was added or what was deleted. All the diff knows is that changed. So it highlights all changes as magenta. And oh, this is interesting. This part of the M, because the M has like three vertical lines, this part happens to line up now with itself, even though it's shifted by 20 pixels. So that's not highlighted, and that makes sense. By the way, I'm stealing this idea from Tsoding, but I think Tsoding did this off stream, so I'm doing this on stream. I'm not like totally stealing his streaming plans. Yeah, I think I'll commit this as is, and then check that it like writes the diff on the GitHub Actions workflow, and then I'll fix the test as a follow-up commit. But I want to call this in the other unit tests too. This is like a low-level ppm tester, so I'm not going to bother doing a diff for that. Same with that. This is actually a font tester, so this, I'll use that subroutine. I want to make one pass where I add this call, and then a second pass where I'll go back and delete this part, which is now part of the diff test subroutine. Right, that should be everything. Now I'll delete this stuff. Yeah, and we've addressed this to-do note. There is an error message for the specific test failure now. Okay, I think that's it. So this should run the same diff for every test now, but there's only one that's failing, so it's only actually going to write one diff image like this. But we'll break another test to see if it works for all of them. Okay, now I have a bunch more unused variables. Usually that's not an error, but because I have a compiler flag that treats warnings as errors, I'm forced to address this. If I don't, I just end up with like a ton of errors every time I work on a feature. So this is the only way to force myself to be good. This one does use CV2. No, not that. Okay. I think that's it. Right? There are probably more unused variables. Or is it just that one? All right, that was it. Okay, yeah, let's break a different test. Let's break computer modern. Let's shift this by 30 pixels. And then there should be 2 test failures and 2 diff images. Yep. 2 failures. If I list the diffs, now we have 1 for Garamond and 1 for computer modern. CM is computer modern. That's the default typeface in LaTeX. Let's see what that one looks like. So that's the same idea. It's just highlighting every different pixel in magenta. And then if we fix that test, we should go back to just 1 failure. And then I'm ready to commit. We want to commit with 1 failure so that I can break the unit tests on the CI, the continuous integration. And I can get rid of my to-do note. Well, now that I have unit tests, the next thing that I want to do is change the way that pixel coordinates are rounded. Because right now I'm using truncation rounding. I want to do nearest integer rounding. So I think that's going to break my tests, but it should be like a small, kind of a small number of pixels. But now that I have diffs, I can check those and be more confident in that change. Yeah, let's commit that. Let's check that that runs on the cloud, and it should break. I broke something on purpose. Because if your unit tests always pass no matter what you do, then they're not actually unit tests. So I like to break it on purpose every once in a while. That's good. That failed just like we expect it to. So it says failure at the end, and there should be a different error message or like a specific error message for the one test that failed. And there it is. It's failing for Garamond because we are shifting the pixels for Garamond by 20 pixels compared to what it should be. So if we delete this, this should fix the test. Let's do that locally first and then push it. All of the unit tests pass now. And now that should pass on the cloud as well. So let's wait for that. Why did this take me to that? Details. I guess I clicked on the wrong thing. Success. Let's go. That was only Ubuntu. It also runs the tests on Mac. And on Windows, it compiles, but it doesn't run anything because I think there's a bug in GitHub Actions that can't run G-Fortran compiled executables. Like, it used to work, but then it stopped working within the last couple years or so. Okay, now that we have diffs, I want to change the way that pixel rounding is done. So if I change this int, which truncates to nint, or nearest int, that's, like if you have 0.6, that rounds up to 1. If you use truncation rounding, 0.6 would go to 0. So I think this one should change my results. I also want to do the rounding in a different place. Like I want to use doubles for as long as possible, and then only round when I'm actually setting pixels in like draw line or draw Bezier. But I think if I do this, it should break my tests, and now that we have diffs, I should be able to see which pixels changed. Yeah, a bunch of stuff is failing. 5 tests failed. Actually, I have other tests on like lower level stuff, like UTF-8 to UTF-32 conversion. So some of that stuff passed, but like basically all of my font specimens are failing now. Let me just batch convert these because opening PPM files in GIMP is kind of annoying. So let me clean out that directory. Rerun the tests, and then batch convert all the PPMs to PNGs. So these are the PPM files that I have. They're the specimens, and then there are also diffs now, which we just made. But I don't have any PNGs, and PNGs are a lot easier to open with the default apps that Windows has. So I want to batch convert those. I have a script for that. I can do the fancy syntax highlighting here. So it just runs magic to convert PPM files to PNG files, and it does that for everything in the build directory. So I wanted to clean because I had like 500 files in there, and I didn't want to convert all of those. Just want to convert like the diffs from the unit tests. So that's pretty fast. And now I can just look at these in Windows Photos app, whatever the hell this app is called these days. What the hell? Here we go. So this is not a diff, this is just the test output. This is a diff, and yeah, you can see it's very slight differences. It's just right around the edges. Some things are the same, but then like some pixels around the edge of the contour, well, I'm only drawing contours for now, I'm not filling anything in, but like it's a difference of 1 pixel. It's a difference of either truncation rounding or rounding some things up to the next nearest integer, or the nearest integer. So this is basically what I expected these diffs to look like, but now that I'm exporting a diff, I can see that and confirm it. Yeah, and basically they're all like this. I can do non-Latin text, as you can see here. This is Devanagari. I think that looks okay. Like, this is the image, this is not the diff, so it's helpful to look at this too. Actually, maybe I want to look at them side by side. So open up Bodoni and the diff for Bodoni. So here you can see that there's a difference, but can't really see like whether a pixel was added or deleted because the diff doesn't really know whether it was added or deleted. But here you can confirm that like there are pixels here. I want to make sure that I didn't just delete pixels. I just moved the outline of the contour by 1 pixel, and that's fine. So I think that looks okay. But I also want to change where I'm performing the rounding. Do I want to do that all in the same commit or make separate commits? Well, let's try it. So I want X to be double precision. I don't want X to be rounded yet. So X is my array that has the coordinates of all the control points in the glyph. So it's set there, but then it gets transformed and it gets scaled. So I have a resolution in pixels per unit, so it gets scaled by that. And then there's also a general matrix transformation for compound glyphs, which has like a matrix multiplication plus a translation. So that's an affine transformation. And that goes into X. It's transformed relative to like the original glyph coordinates. And then there's also a translation here because when I typeset one letter, I want to then like advance by the width of that character before I typeset the next letter. So that's a horizontal translation. And then for like multiple lines of text, there's also Y translation. But now that this is double, now that these are doubles, I don't want to round these yet. So I can take out that rounding, I can take out this rounding. Taking out those to-do notes because that's what we're doing. Yeah, and then I also have these temporary variables A, B, and C. Because sometimes for Bezier curves, you have A, B, and C, which are explicitly part of the glyph, but sometimes you have like this implicit point, which is halfway between two of the explicit control points. So I need to make those doubles as well. So let's yank that and put it here. So let me search for, instead of just X, either X, A, B, or C. And then, where do I want to round? Where's draw line? I might as well make these functions take doubles instead of ints, and then the rounding can happen inside of these functions. Is that the right way to do it? I don't know. Maybe I'll round outside of these functions later. like the thing is, there's a lerp inside of here. So we have to when you draw a line, you have to interpolate along the length of the line. So you might as well keep them doubles until you draw the pixel. And then actually draw a pixel could take doubles as well. And then this would be the only function that has to do any rounding. I think that makes sense. So these are doubles. I don't want to round A, B, or C. Also not sure, I might want to make these translations doubles as well. But for now, I think I'll leave those ones as integers. The compiler is probably going to complain about all kinds of casting operations now. So I want this to be a double too. And then inside of draw pixel, we will finally round the pixel coordinates to the nearest integer. IP for integer pixel, as opposed to like the real pixel. I think that's basically it. And then draw a line needs to work similarly. So I think that's it. Let's see if that works. It's probably not going to compile. $12.12. Right. This is IP now for the integer pixel coordinate. Yeah, I need to replace like all of those. Yeah, these should be doubles. Double, not doubles. It's compiling, and it crashed. Oh, we might also have to clamp. Yeah, now this is casting. This used to be setting one integer array to another integer array, but now we're like casting doubles to reals, and I'm trying to do that with automatic allocation, which is apparently not that well developed in G4Train, so it crashes. Line 1070, is that right? Yeah, line 1070, so it doesn't like that. So maybe I don't want to initialize it like that. Maybe I just want to allocate it here and then use the original glyph coordinates here. Let's try that. Let's see if that works. Because now this initializes x, and this transforms an existing x value. So I think that should be okay. It's running. It's running. The tests are still failing because I haven't committed that diff rebaseline yet. Let's reconvert all of those ppm diffs to PNGs. And then let's look at those. No, I want the PNGs. Did these not convert? Or modified 1108. Let me clean out that whole directory. Just for my own personal convenience, I think I want to link in with a PNG writer as like some third-party library so that I don't have to do this extra conversion step. Okay, now these diffs are updated. Let's look at the original images too, not just the diffs. Yes, yeah, so it still looks okay. So we have Ubuntu, Noto Sans, Garamond, Computer Modern, and Bodoni. Those are the 5 fonts or the 5 typefaces that I'm covering in my unit tests. And these diffs look the same. So again, it's just basically a difference of 1 pixel. It's the difference of truncation rounding to nearest integer rounding. Some of them are the same, but like roughly half of them are now rounding up instead of rounding down. So these diffs make sense. Is it better? Is it worse? I mean, it's probably a wash. I don't have any anti-aliasing, so either way it looks jagged. I could always increase the resolution, but I don't want these diffs to take up a huge amount of file space because I am uploading the expected output in ppm format to Git, and those are like 2 megabytes per file at this resolution. So I don't want to make these any bigger. I don't know, I think it looks okay. One thing that I've been doing, maybe if you've seen my thumbnails, or like the figure in the README on Git, like these are filled in. My library can't fill in glyphs, at least not yet. And then if you look at my most recent thumbnail, the masculine urge to typeset, those are filled in. The way that I'm doing that is bucket fill in Git. But an interesting thing is if you have any small 1 pixel gap in these contours, the bucket fill will be messed up. So I think I can test that these outlines are still good by trying to bucket fill a few things in GIMP. So let's open one of these. Not the diff, just the original file. Well, not the original file, but the output of the unit test, and it's not there. So let's try Noto Sans. Let's try to select, basically select contiguous region on the basis of color. So I think I want this selection tool. And let's select a few things. Looks like the selections are okay. It's not like selecting my entire canvas, which would indicate that I have a gap somewhere. Let's bucket fill that. Or, no, I want yeah, fill whole selection. Okay. Yeah, I think that looks okay. If there was a gap in my outline, so let's undo that fill. If there was a gap, like even just 1 pixel, that selection would have like filled up basically the entire top 2/3 of my canvas here, but it didn't, so that's good. So that's an extra confirmation beyond the unit tests that these are okay. Anyway, that's how I'm making thumbnails. I'm filling glyphs in GIMP now because I can't do that in my library yet. Probably next weekend, I will finally get around to filling in glyph contours. Anyway, those were kind of like the 2 big things that I wanted to do today on this stream. Now I might just clean up a little bit of tech debt. Now let's get these tests updated and committed. So I have to do that manually. That's good because it forces me to like think and do work to rebaseline a unit test rather than just saying, fuck it, update everything, assume that this is good, don't check it. So I think this is good. But now to update my tests, I have to copy the expected ppm files into this data directory. That's where I keep my expected test output and upload it to Git. So Doni, Computer Modern, Garamond, and I have 5 files here, and those are the 5 tests that are failing. So that makes sense. So we have Bodoni, Computer Modern, Garamond, Noto Sans, and finally Ubuntu. Now all 5 of those have been updated. Maybe I want to do this as 2 separate commits, so like that way I have like a record in the commits of what broke the tests. So I think I want to commit the source change first and then update the tests as a separate commit. I hope the diff is probably going to show me the ppm files because Git doesn't realize that these are binary files. I think the reason for that is that like the first few characters and the first few lines actually are ASCII. So the way that Git tells whether a file is text, not necessarily ASCII, it can be Unicode, whether it's text or binary, is it like looks at the first few characters, and if those are valid characters, then it assumes the whole file is text. And then the ppm has just barely long enough text editor to fool Git into thinking this binary file is actually text, but it's not. So I don't want that. I want just the diff of the source file. Yeah, so basically we're using doubles instead of integers, and then we're not rounding until the very final step. I think that's the way it should be. There are different philosophies here. I know in Soding's graphics library, he's avoiding floats entirely and only using integers so that it's portable and can be used on embedded systems. That's fine if that's the goal of his project, but like I don't really give a shit about embedded, so like why not use floats? Why not use doubles? I don't see the point in restricting myself to avoid those. So I just want to commit the source change. So it's git commit -m, not -am. So this should break the tests. And then we'll update the expected test output as a separate commit to fix the tests. So 5 tests failed, that's what we expected. It writes diffs for each one of those, but the diffs are on the cloud, so I can't actually see these. One thing that you can do with GitHub workflows is you can upload artifacts from the GitHub Actions instance, and then I would be able to download that artifact to like look at this image if I wanted to. I don't really have a need for that because I can just run it locally, so I'm not going to do that. Anyway, let's fix those tests. And now just commit everything. And those should pass now. I didn't even confirm that locally, or did I? I can't remember. So let's do it locally first and then check the cloud. Yeah, that works locally, and it should work here on the cloud too. Yep, Ubuntu passed already. 14 tests passed, that looks good. Okay, that's done. This is my top to-do list item, but I'm saving that for next weekend. I might not stream tomorrow because like I don't know what else to work on. I don't know, maybe having like a real app that takes input instead of just hard coding the text that it outputs. That's also kind of big though, so I don't know if I want to start that tomorrow. Yeah, so I might not stream tomorrow because I don't really have a whole lot that I want to do until I take on the big contour filling feature, and I'm gonna save that for next weekend. But I think I have a little tech debt. Like I already looked at seeking to table offsets, and I want this to be a function. I talked about that a few streams ago, but I was like already towards the end of a stream, and I didn't want to do it then. But I think I'm ready to do it now. So I just want the function to be named fseekTable, and then it seeks to a given table name. I think it needs to take the TTF struct too. And there's a better place where I do this as one line without a temporary variable. And that is right here, like HHEA. So it's the same as this. And this is what I want the function to be. Really, it's a subroutine, not a function. I guess I need the file unit as an argument too. So need the file unit, the TTF struct, and the tag of the table. That's like the 4-character identifier of the table. And then the tag, I want to see how I declare that, because it's 4 characters. I think I just have it as like any length. Yeah, so the tag, it should be 4 characters or less, but for my functions, I'm allowing that to be like any length character. And I think that's it. And then instead of hard coding HMTX, it's going to be the tag. I think that's it. So we need the file unit argument. Before I replace all of the other ones, let's see if that compiles. Nope. I also kind of want to encapsulate the file unit handle inside of the TTF struct so that I don't have to pass this pair, because I think there are a few places where I pass these as 2 different arguments, but really it's kind of like the same thing. All right. Now here it's different because I actually want to save this offset because then I use that. Do I use it? Yeah. Yeah, because we have to jump to the CMAP table and then we have to jump to like the CMAP subtables, which have offsets relative to the top level CMAP offset. So this one needs to be saved and I can't use this function that I just implemented. Here I can use it. Here I'm already using it, and maybe that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. All right, everything still passes. That's going to be a commit. I might end the stream soon because this is about all I wanted to do today. I'll take a look at my to-do notes. Maybe I have a little bit more tech debt that I can wrap up quickly. Let's make sure that those pass on the cloud. That passed on Ubuntu at least. That's good enough for me. How many places do I have head as a literal? Actually, it is 2 places. That's like just on the verge of needing drying up. So it's not, I think it's not critical that I address that. Oh, I remember. We have a few fonts that I can't support. I think I want to see if I can support some of these other like other glyph transformations. Because let me make this fail at the first error. So let's enable set-e. This will make my bash script exit as soon as it gets an error. I think. I hope that works. Yeah, so we have a Miri bold where my max number of glyph components isn't big enough. So what I should do, and I have a note for this, is that I should either do 2 passes where I count the number of components and then save them, or I think it might actually be easier to make a dynamic array just for this specific compound glyph type. But for now, I just have a hard-coded upper limit of this size. Let's try making it 16. See if that font will work now. Okay, it's still not big enough. Yeah, the thing about compound glyphs is it's a pretty lightweight structure. All it has is an index to a glyph component and then a transformation. So by allocating that to some array that's bigger than I need it to be, I'm only allocating like, I don't know, maybe 16 bytes. Well, this type is actually 8 doubles, so that's 16 bytes. No, that's 8 times 8. It's 64 bytes plus this. Okay, so this is like 72 bytes per glyph component. That's still kind of lightweight. It's not like I have an array of coordinates for every component. That's only allocated if it needs to be allocated. Like the component is a pretty lightweight structure, so it's not really terrible to just hard code some fixed upper limit size. But this Amiri bold font is really being problematic. Jesus. Okay. Oh, Amiri bold worked now. And then Amiri bold slanted has a different error. This is probably something else I can fix because all I need to do is test it. First of all, I need to figure out which characters or which glyphs in this font are using the 2x2 matrix transformation. And then I need to look at something to make sure that's rendering properly. But we should have a file for Amiri bold. Let's see if that looks okay. Looks good enough to me. Ooh, ooh, ooh. We have a gap here in this contour. And in this contour. So that doesn't look great. So what's going on with Amiri bold? Let's preview that on fontdrop.info. This is a cool online tool for looking at fonts. Chrome might be a little slow with this. Wait. Here we go. Why do these look so fucking small? So definitely had a problem with I. And A. What if I just fill in more pixels? I think it looks the same, doesn't it? How do I know if this reloaded or not? It did fix the I. It did not fix the R or the A. So what is going on with this? I wonder, was it like this before I made the rounding change? So let me stash and revert by a couple commits. One go back to here because this is before I changed the way that I was rounding integers and doubles. And then first of all, it's going to fail because of the number of components. First of all, it's going to keep running. So let's set errors in the bash script. And then, yeah, so it's saying the max components are too numerous. So we had it set to 64, but I reverted. So let's set that to 64 again. is this up to date? I don't know if this PNG is new or not. Amiri? Is it, it's Amiri. There's one called Arimo and there's one called Amiri, which is like a nightmare for dyslexia. Okay. It was fine before I changed the way that I rounded everything. So that's bad. Yeah, maybe I'll revert that permanently. Or I have to go in and debug it if it's not working the way that I want it to. Because these contours are closed now. There's no gap here at the top of the eye, or top of the A, or in the I. There was a gap somewhere around here, and there were gaps in the R as well. But these all look okay now when I reverted back to before I changed the way that I'm rounding. Let me try filling these in GIMP to make sure there aren't any more contours that I can't see. Yeah, discard. That looks pretty much okay. There's a bottleneck in the top of the lowercase a here, so I didn't select this part. That's okay. As long as there are no holes in my contours or no gaps where the contiguous region selector will spill outside of what should be a glyph. I think this is looking okay. Where is the bucket? I can't find the bucket. There it is. Okay. Let's do some of these ones at the bottom too. To get like the whole lowercase alphabet. All right, that seems okay. Let's finish out the alphabet, and maybe I'll do the numerals too. And then I'll probably end the stream, because I don't really have time to dive into this bug right now. I've got to eat. So I think that looks pretty much okay. There are no gaps in these contours. I'll have to figure out why the way that I rounded doubles to integers is leaving gaps in my contours. I don't even know if it's straight lines or Bezier curves. It might be a little bit of both, but we had a gap like here in the R, And then we had gaps. We had gaps in like a few other glyphs, like the I and the capital A or the uppercase A as well. So I have to debug that some other time. I might do it off screen. But yeah, I think I will end this stream for today. I don't really want to commit anything because I've reverted back, or I checked out like an older commit. Somewhere in this commit, it actually broke something. So you'll have to figure that out. But I think that's it for today. So thank you to everybody who tuned in. I really appreciate it. And I will catch you next time. Bye.